Welcome back, everyone, to Well Lives Institute. This is week one, technically week two of the 6 weeks to a Rejuvenated You protocol. Last week in your pre-week was all about getting yourself ready and removing any of the garbage from your mind, your mindset, and also your pantry. So I hope you took an opportunity to really get serious with that. If you didn't, it's okay. Just know that going forward, we're going to be disciplined and we are going to get through this and we are going to come out on the other side living and being your most vital self. So here we go. I'm going to take an opportunity to get us grounded. Let's take a few deep breaths. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. And finally, exhale. So again, this week, you'll be focusing on eliminating any type of gut triggering foods. Starting this process out on day one, you'll be removing gluten. Gluten is a general name for proteins that are found in wheat. Some examples could be wheat berries, durum, emmer, semolina, spelt, farro, farina, gram, rye, barley, and then there's triticale, which is a cross between wheat and rye. The main things about gluten is that gluten helps foods to maintain their shape, and it kind of acts as a glue, hence the name gluten. It holds foods together. Celiac disease, which is a severe allergy to the protein gluten, about 2% of people that we know live and exist with full-blown celiac disease, but most people will have an intolerance to gluten and not necessarily a severe allergy to it. And this is pretty much caused by having not enough of the right gut bugs, and then also the fact that the gut lining could be compromised. It also has to do with that many of the products that exist today, or gluten products that exist today, are genetically modified. They aren't natural whole food products. There's been evidence that the gluten protein actually attacks the thyroid, and it looks very similar to an enzyme that we actually have, which is called transglutaminase in our bodies, which we need to form chemical bonds throughout the body. The thyroid possesses a high concentration of this enzyme. And so when the immune system attacks gliadin, the antibodies also attack the thyroid. So this is why sometimes you will have subtle responses innately or internally that you may not necessarily know what's going on. And these symptoms could mimic you having some sort of thyroid issue. So removing gluten day one is going to be very important for you. Now, some whole foods that are gluten-free that exist will be rice, cassava, corn, some soy products, potato, tapioca, beans, sorghum, quinoa, millet, arrowroot, amaranth, flax seeds, chia seeds, yucca. You have some gluten-free oats out there, and then also different nut flours for those of you who can tolerate nuts. Pasta was a big deal for me, but we did, list some substitutes here. Giving up pasta, you have spaghetti squash, you have quinoa, kelp noodles, shredded cabbage, zucchini noodles, you got root veggies. And then there's other options to bread, such as using lettuce to create lettuce wraps. You can also use unwich or make zucchini sandwiches. So Just want you to know that there are a lot of foods out there on the market that will have gluten free on the label. Just want you to pay attention to, what the main ingredients of those foods still are, because some foods that are labeled gluten free are very highly processed. And remember, that was one of the things you were getting rid of in your pre-week. Anything that is considered highly processed, that is not essentially just your basic whole natural foods, it's not something that you want to be eating a lot of. Moving forward to day 2, you will be going sugar free. And this will mean that you are removing refined simple sugars. And this ultimately may be the most beneficial thing you can do for your gut overall. So, refined sugar has been estimated to be much more addictive than cocaine. And I know that's, people know this, but yet and still, we still consume sugar. And it's not that you can't have sugar or that you will never ever be able to eat anything that does have sugar in it. It is about consuming things all in moderation. And when you look at the ingredients of pretty much almost anything that you eat, there's some form of sugar or syrup or sucralose or something in those foods. So over time or over the course of the day, you have now consumed too much sugar because it's in literally everything. Highly addictive. And heads up if you didn't already catch this, but it feeds the bad gut bacteria. And that is what we are trying to get under control here. So taking time to remove sugar, refined sugars from your diet is going to be very, very important. Because sugar can be so hard to give up cold turkey, you will be able to just do like a few natural sugars or no sugar recipes, things like that, or sugar alternatives. But you have to be very careful when it comes down to artificial sweeteners because they are also very toxic. And in some situations, they do more harm than the refined version of just natural sugar. So you kind of want to stay away from things that are considered diet beverages or things that are sweetened with, alternatives like Splenda or anything that's labeled sugar free. Because 9 times out of 10, in just, being labeled sugar free just means that they chose to use some other type of alternative that could actually be a little bit more detrimental for your health. And you're also going to want to note that sugar feeds yeast. So if you have any symptoms of any type of yeast overgrowth, then removing sugar from your diet will ultimately kind of help you get that but back in under control very, very easily. You're also going to want to limit or remove your alcohol consumption at this time because alcohol is actually going to have the very same effect as the sugar in terms of destroying your gut lining and then also making it very easy for those bad gut bugs to proliferate or to get worse. Next thing you're going to want to do is remove dairy. Now, dairy probably was just as hard for me as gluten and pasta was removing because I got to have my cheese. And that was the hardest thing for me giving up. But your gut will thank you at the end of the day. And like I said, you will be able to reintroduce some of these items all in moderation later on. Dairy is not essentially bad. The issue is that we don't get to consume dairy in its natural raw form these days like we used to historically, in which raw dairy, natural dairy, was very good for our gut bugs and it kind of helped our gut health as a whole, providing essential enzymes and things that our bodies needed. The problem lies now in the manufacturing and the process by which modern dairy is created. So most dairy, like your milk, cheese, yogurt, sour cream, etc., is made from factory farmed cows, and they live in oftentimes inhumane conditions, and they're given loads of antibiotics and steroids. And then once the milk is then, extracted out of them, it is then pasteurized, and pasteurization is the process of cooking it, and all the bad bacteria is not necessarily getting out. I mean, the bad bacteria is getting out, but then also essentially the good bacteria is also eliminated. So most of the vitamins and minerals are also eliminated. And then when these bacteria are getting cooked out, they're actually, these are the ones that you actually need in your body to be able to digest the lactose. And since they have been removed, now your body kind of like doesn't know what to really do with it. Whereas back in the day, we got raw milk from pasture raised cows. These were organic animals, and their milk was just a healthier choice and option for us. So, in the process of allowing your gut to heal, you're going to want to eliminate all dairy and just give your gut some time to really take a break. And this will allow you to see how well you do with or without dairy. Another good thing about removing dairy is that skincare. For those of you who might be dealing with issues with acne or your skin healing, removing dairy and sugar, one of the best things that you can do for healing that. Looking at some examples of alternatives or things that you can use, kefir is going to be a great example of a healthy dairy option that you can use during this time. It's going to be um, you know, easier for you to maybe try like almond milk or cashew milk or hemp milk, which are going to be your plant-based milks, and they are a bit more healthier for you. Now, I unfortunately found out that I was allergic to almonds, and I had been drinking almond milk and and going insane with this, especially during the time when I was pregnant with my son, because that's what I used as like a protein source. And when I found out that I was allergic to almonds, it was like, okay, I had to take that out. And it was difficult. But during that time, I used it as an alternative and it worked well for me. The next thing we're going to be removing, or the next day, is going to be beans, legumes, and grains. So while grains and beans, they're really good for you, they do provide an essential amount of nutrients and proteins for many. During this time where you're trying to allow your gut to heal, it's going to be important for you to really try to, get these, get, let these foods go just for the elimination period. And then once we are reintroducing them, see how well you respond to them. So grains are a family that includes wheat, barley, rye, corn, millet, oats, spelts, like we mentioned earlier in the gluten products. So many of those things you've already removed. Then you have your beans and your legumes, which are going to be your red beans, black beans, your lentils, any type of peas, azuki beans, garbanzo beans, or chickpeas, and like I said, many of these things have a very high nutritional value and they are actually very healthy for you. But the dark side of these foods is that they contain what is referred to as anti-nutrients as well. Beans contains essentially what is called lectins, and lectins aren't always bad. And actually, some of them are actually very beneficial for you. But then there's two types. There's the agglutinins and then there's the prolaminins. And these bind to carbohydrates and they can actually irritate the gut lining. They also act as natural insecticides for the plants. So they kind of kill the gut lining in a sense. And so, if you eat them a lot, they can actually contribute to those leaky gut symptoms in which, your harsh proteins are then now leaking into the blood, and this is causing further distress or symptoms that you may be having. The other thing is that they contain phytates and phytic acid, which occurs naturally within the seeds of the grains, and they act as a phosphorus store. However, phytic acid inhibits digestion and it can bind to certain minerals like zinc, iron, and calcium. And those things are very vital to your body's functioning, your immune system. And preventing their absorption is actually bad because we need those minerals. So vegetarians will, find this difficult, removing beans and legumes and grains for a while, but it is a process of gut healing. and you will definitely get your protein and carbohydrates from other sources. It's not impossible, and you're not alone. So you just got to take this one day at a time. I promise you will get through it and come out on the other side feeling your best. If you do, or when you do start to reintroduce beans and legumes, I guess one of the main things that I would like to note is that it's all about the way you cook them and the way you prepare them, and you want them to be as easy as possible to digest. So especially like the lentils or black eyed peas and mung beans, you want to make sure you are soaking them overnight before cooking them, or buying brands that this is what they specialize in doing. And my aunt used to always soak the peas and then pick out the bad ones, and then didn't really kind of understand what was going on there. But that process makes them easier to digest, and then makes them less harsh on our gut barrier. You want to avoid harsh forms of beans and legumes, anything such as, soy products. So that was another main thing. Now, after you have taken time to really remove these items out of your diet one by one, or day one by one, the last 3 to 4 days of this week, you will be doing what is, pretty much like a intermittent fasting, and then also an intermittent cleanse. So with the intermittent fasting, this is going to be like a day, a time frame throughout each and every day that you are essentially giving your body time to just naturally rest. And it'll become easier and second nature the longer you do it, but you're going to want to pick a consecutive time frame that'll work for you. So I started with 12 hours. I usually like to recommend this to all clients. Start with 12 hours. If you can, don't make it hard on yourself. Choose something like 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., or 10 p.m. to 10 a.m., or whatever will work for you based on your schedule. And it makes it easier because throughout this time, half of it you are sleeping overnight. You're not up thinking about eating. And if you do wake up in the middle of the night and you're one of those people that gets the munchies, this is where you're going to want to really limit yourself and, I don't know, put a lock on that pantry door. But there's no snacking during this time, no eating during this time. If anything, at bare minimum, you can have a few sips of water here and there. But during this time, you're going to want to not consume anything. And just know and remind yourself that during this time, your body is resting, your body is healing, your body is rejuvenating. It is absorbing the things that it needs to do. It's processing things the way it needs to do. It's getting rid of waste, and it's going to be rejuvenated because you're giving it this time. If you're constantly eating, and providing things, providing food, your body never actually has a time to have time to rest and then essentially use those items the way it needs to. And a lot of things just get stored as fat. And then that's where you see a lot of weight gain issues. So really tapping into that, thinking about how you're really feeling. Are you really hungry, or are you just eating because you may be emotionally out of whack? And that's going to be really important too. Really paying attention to how you're feeling and whether or not your actions, or whether or not you're reaching for a snack because your body is actually needing it, or needing something, or needing some fuel, or if it's just something emotionally going on. So really take the opportunity to listen to your body. For the intermittent cleanse, you want to try to do a day where you are at least where you're not consuming anything that you're not needing to consume in that day, and you only do one main solid food meal throughout the day. And the rest of the day, you're going to limit it to either just raw foods only, or you can incorporate what I like to incorporate, which is going to be protein broths, because this can really help tailor that hunger while you're giving your body time to rest. You can do this over 3 days. There's a lot of different broths on the market these days. If you are able to consume chicken broth or beef broth, those are going to be your main go-tos, because essentially they're going to be providing your body with all of the nutrients and the elements that you need, and then it's going to help really answer to that feeling of hunger. So getting in some bone broths will be really helpful during this time. But you want to maybe start your day with just a smoothie. And then, throughout the main part of your day, you only consume broths for lunch. And then in the evening, you can have that solid meal, or you can switch it around and do the solid meal and during the day if you're most active during the day, and then do your broth at night. But you're going to want to limit it to only one solid meal a day, and you pick and choose what time you would like to have that meal. Getting through week 1 can sound like the greatest challenge. But after week 1, you're going to really start to know and pay attention to how is your body feeling. So really use your journal to know any symptoms that you may be having. Jot down, what you ate. How did you feel after you ate that? And really note any changes that you are realizing. Are you going to the bathroom regularly? Are you not going at all? Have you started going more? Has the consistency of your stools changed? How's your urine looking? Please, please, please remember to stay hydrated throughout this time. If water is not your best friend, I promise you it better become. Because your body needs hydration just like it needs fuel. So make sure you are getting in the appropriate amounts of hydration, whether it's going to be a healthy combination between water, milks, and teas. Being mindful of the products that you are removing each day. Try not to do too many caffeinated beverages, but there are plenty of herbal teas out, these days that can really help with you getting through this process. Have faith and know that you have the support of both myself and the support group. If this gets difficult for you, always remember to just take time to breathe and remind yourself you are worthy of this. Your body deserves this, and you are doing the ultimate best thing that you can really do for yourself in terms of health and healing by paying attention to your gut health and allowing it to be restored. It's never too late. If you, fall off or, get thrown off, don't beat yourself up. Just get back on track. Take it one day at a time. And remember, Chic loves you. I'm here. And I will see you next week in week 2.